Welcome to part 2 of the best and worst foods for type 2 diabetes. In part 1, you learned what a diabetes diet should accomplish, why a diabetes diet can be so powerful, and details about exactly how much protein, carbohydrate, and fat you should aim for. And now in part 2, you will get easy to understand guidelines for the proven diabetes diet, learn why other diets aren't the solution, and get the quick blueprint to reversing type 2 diabetes. If you haven't seen the previous video, you can click right here to watch that. With that said, let's get into all the good stuff right now. My name is Robbie Barbero. I've been living with type 1 diabetes for 23 years now. Together, my co-founder Cyrus Kambala and we've been coaching people to reverse insulin resistance for decades using simple, evidence-based guidelines that are easy to understand and fun to implement. I'm excited to share practical and useful information with you today. So, what does the best type 2 diabetes diet look like? We break foods down into 3 categories: green light, yellow light, and red light foods. Green light foods you could eat as much as you want, period. These foods include fruits, starchy vegetables, legumes, intact whole grains, non-starchy vegetables, leafy greens, herbs and spices, and mushrooms. Meanwhile, yellow light foods are high-quality foods that are part of a healthy diabetes diet, but they are not to be eaten in unlimited quantities. These include avocados, nuts and seeds, nut and seed butter, plant-based milks, coconut meat, soy products, olives, pasta alternatives, sprouted bread, dried fruit, and fermented foods. And finally, we recommend removing red light foods from your diet and your pantry. These foods include red meat, white meat, eggs, all dairy products, oils of any kind, fish and shellfish, processed baked goods, sweeteners, refined white foods, coconut products, processed foods in general, whether they are fancy plant-based packaged foods or Twinkies, you gotta get them out. We actually have a full video on this diet and how to execute it, which you can add to your queue and watch right here. And for dozens of videos on how to master your diabetes health, you can subscribe by clicking at the button on the bottom of the screen, and you can hit that notification bell to be subscribed and get informed when the next video comes down the line. But for now, we're going to go into why this diet is so much better than other diabetes diets and how you can take quick and easy steps to reverse type 2 diabetes. One of the main obstacles to diabetes care that we discussed before is that there's a great deal of conflicting information out there about which diet is best for you. We'll touch on a few here, including the principles behind them and where they may fall flat as a good diabetes diet. Of course, always work with your dietitian or your diabetes health care provider to ensure that your team is on the same page about what you're planning to eat. First, we have the glycemic index. The glycemic index measures how quickly a food raises your blood glucose level. The food with the highest GI is pure glucose at 100. Foods can be listed as low glycemic, that's 55 or less, medium glycemic, 56 to 69, or high glycemic, 70 to 100. The glycemic index of a given food varies by the temperature at which the food is eaten, the cooking method, the ripeness, and the variety. For example, sweet potato versus white potato. Within the green light category of foods, some have a higher GI than others, but please know that only one green light food is high in the glycemic index, and it's barely high glycemic. This is watermelon with a score of 72. In general, the glycemic index can be useful when you're first transitioning to a low-fat plant-based whole food diet, but it can be misleading in regard to the bigger picture. Where the glycemic index falls a bit short in informing a diabetes diet is that it doesn't acknowledge the tendency of different foods to cause insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. We suggest disregarding the glycemic index. The glycemic index does not take into account the quantity or type of macronutrients in your food, the presence of other foods in the same meal, the nutrient density of your food, the status of your gut microbiome, or your level of insulin sensitivity. For these reasons, the glycemic index is not very useful. Next, we have carbohydrate counting. Carbohydrate counting, objectively, is simply counting the number of carbohydrates in your diet compared to fats and proteins, which is not a bad thing. In fact, it can be very helpful. It can be a very helpful technique to make sure you're eating a low-fat diet. But carbohydrate counting is often associated with trying to keep carbohydrates down, which is counterproductive to the process of reversing insulin resistance. As we've touched on, fats and proteins are some of the main culprits in causing insulin resistance. It's not necessarily bad to count your carbohydrates, but we prefer focusing on the foods that you can happily eat in high quantities and ones that will reverse insulin resistance. Put your focus there. Now let's talk about the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is modeled after the common breakdowns of plants, vegetables, fruits, seeds, oils, meats, and grains in traditional Mediterranean cultures. Though exact definitions can vary, most common understandings of this diet place a heavy emphasis on plants and whole foods, with lean or fresh meats and seafood on occasion. Extensive studies of this diet have found that, especially compared to the standard American diet and diets high in processed foods and sugars, the Mediterranean diet can be a powerful tool to combat diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and the risk of heart disease. But in terms of reversing insulin resistance, it still lags behind a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. In many ways, the Mediterranean diet is simply a less strict version of the low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, though they prioritize the same emphasis on whole carbohydrates, low fats, and natural foods. Coming up next, we have the low-carb diet. The low-carb diet isn't the worst possible diet you can have if you're living with any form of diabetes, but it sure is close. And in the long term, it's tremendously bad for your overall health. Though low-carb diets, which by definition are high in fat and protein, often have quick, immediate results in terms of weight loss, better blood glucose, and better blood pressure, in the long term, these diets are disastrous for your diabetes health. Don't let the quick results fool you. Low-carb diets like keto, paleo, carnivore, and others are enticing and even show deceptive early results, but they're a disaster in the long term. And last up, we have intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is less of a dietary plan and more of an eating schedule. Though when combined with a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, the results can be astounding. The key here is a process called autophagy. When your body enters a period of fasting or calorie restriction, it recycles excess fats, proteins, and old cells, which helps with weight loss as well as immunity and overall health. Combined with the right diet, you're set up for success. By itself, intermittent fasting is a potent tool, but when used in tandem with exercise and the right diet, it can be a key to reversing insulin resistance fast. Now, we know we just spent a bunch of time saying, avoid this, avoid that. And we also know that one of the hardest parts of adjusting to a diabetes diet can be the feeling like you're giving up a lot of your favorite foods. That's why we've put together a database of recipes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, desserts, and snacks that will make you feel satisfied and abundant. And in the companion article to this video, we've even included an extensive sample meal plan for a green light diet. Let us know down in the comments what is the hardest food or meal for you to give up, and we'll pop back in with a green light example that would be a great alternative. And in addition to choosing the right diet, we've also got a few tips to stay on top of your eating plan to help you reverse non-insulin dependent type 2 diabetes and avoid problems like chronic disease and weight gain. The first is to read food labels. In general, the fewer ingredients and the less complicated or scientific sounding the ingredients, the better, though there are always some exceptions. A good rule of thumb is that the food defaults to the lowest level ingredient. So if you have 6 green light ingredients, but 1 red light ingredient, it's best to search for an alternative food product. Bonus points for natural fruits, plants, and vegetables that are so fresh they don't even need a label. The second is to get active. This is another common sense suggestion, but one that can make a major difference. According to the American Diabetes Association, exercise is a fundamental part of diabetes treatment, and we're big believers that it's fun and a fulfilling part of our method. Not to mention the many other health benefits of exercise. And finally, remember that you don't have to go at it alone, especially if you're just starting out. Meal planning is one of the most powerful tools to keep a diabetes diet fresh, fun, and healthy. But if you're not used to the red light, green light guidelines, it can be hard to come up with recipes. That's where you can enlist the help of experts. We suggest working with our team of expert diabetes health coaches, registered dietitians, registered nurses, and just flat out diabetes experts. In order to find out which option is best for you, we suggest booking a free discovery call so you can speak with a Mastering Diabetes enrollment specialist. Simply click the link below and you'll be directed to a page where you can book a time that works for you and speak with a member of the Mastering Diabetes team. Thanks for watching. Please share this video with your loved ones, and we'll see you in the next one.